Hi, welcome to the System Unfiltered. Here's another episode. Today we're going to talk about the history of the NYPD. Um, I just Googled some stuff and I came across this document. It's a legal document created by an official document created by Raymond Kelly, which was one of the police commissioners. Um, he was actually the police commissioner when I became a police officer in 2005. And I found the history of the NYPD very interesting. A lot of things that they went through in the past, it seems like we're going through now and stuff, and we're trying things that we tried back in the past also. Um, you know, it's ironic, but I think we should look into it. Anyway, the reason why I think I should look into it is because those who don't know the history are doomed to repeat it. So let's take a look here. History of the New York City Police Department by Raymond Kelly, Police Commissioner. Here's a official stamp. It says U.S. Department of Justice, National Institute of Justice. All right. The history of New York's finest, the humble beginnings, the Dutch era, 1625 to 1664. So this is when the Dutch first came over Manhattan Island and settled, and this is basically talking about when they settled here and how they created police force, right? It's not the NYPD what we know today, but it's the beginning policing. So, when the Dutch colonists first arrived on Manhattan Island, they found themselves faced with the harsh and often hostile frontier. Armed with hope and determination, these hardy settlers struggled daily with fear, hunger, sickness, and poverty. They realized they had to establish a system of law and order, or their community would perish. Relying on their European experience, they formed a council to make and interpret the law. The council then appointed a scout fiscal, Dutch for legal officer, to see that its edicts were obeyed. It was the scout fiscal's job to punish each lawbreaker in a manner befitting the crime. He served as both sheriff and prosecutor throughout New Netherlands, an area covering what is now Lower New York State and Eastern New Jersey. In 1651, the first professional police department was created in New Amsterdam, the Rata Watch. It was a voluntary patrol composed of citizens appointed by the council. I believe New Amsterdam is what is New York City or New York. That's the name that was given here until um, the British came over and renamed it after the Duke of York, becoming New York. So um, we'll get to that though. It was a voluntary patrol composed of citizens appointed by the council. Voluntary, so they weren't paid. In addition to muskets, its members were equipped with a hand rattle and gave the fledgling police force its name. So that's how they got the name, the Rattlers, the Rattle Watch, because they had these things that made noises. Because, you know, technology they had at the time. Uh, they strolled the streets to discourage crime and search for lawbreakers. In times of emergency, they noisily spun their rattles to summon assistance from fellow Rattle Watch members. They also served as town criers, announcing the hours from 9 p.m. to daybreak at all street corners. Wow. So they screamed out the time, I guess, every hour from 9 p.m. to the morning. Um, In the late 1658, the 8 members of the Rata Watch began drawing pay, making them the first municipally funded police organization. All right, so that's that. The picture in the middle you see is members of the Rata Watch equipped with muskets and hand rattles received their orders at muster before making their regular rounds at the turn of the 17th century. All right, let's continue. So, under British rule 1664 to 1783, in 1664, the British seized New Amsterdam and its outskirts and renamed the territory New York in honor of the Duke of York. Although immediate steps were taken to make the region's 1,500 settlers conform to English system, peacekeeping activities underwent few changes. So, a couple of things. When the Dutch first settled, you got to understand it was very small. Like the population was probably like 60 or in the hundreds, something like that. It's not a lot of people because when the British came over, it's only 1,500 settlers. So it's not the Manhattan that we know today. Um, these are the settlers we're talking. I'm not talking about the natives that were here and so forth and so on. And I'm not going to get into that politics thing, but we all know or know on our version of the history that happened. And um, let's go on. Instead of a scout Fiscal, there was an English constable. His job was to keep the peace, suppress excessive drinking, gambling, prostitution, and prevent disturbances when church services were in progress. So it kind of sounds a little bit what we're having now, which is excessive drinking in the streets, gambling, prostitution. Okay. During the late 1600s, with the first of the French and Indian Wars underway, the military assumed responsibility for maintaining law and order in the city. Official appointed a bellman to do the job. His title came from the bell he rang while making his rounds and calling out the hours. In addition to the bell, he was issued a gun, uniform, badge, shoes, and stockings, becoming the city's first uniformed policeman. So up top this picture is there are several variations hand rattles carried by members of the rattle watch in emergency situation. Rattles could be noisily spun to summon assistance from fellow rattle watchers members. The start of the 18th century brought radical changes to the system of public protection. The post of bellman was abolished, and the English introduced the constable watch to protect New York's 6,000 residents, which is now lower to mid-Manhattan, was divided into 6 sectors, with the high constable and 12 sub-constables sworn to take care and preserve the peace throughout the area. In 1731, a watch house or jail was built at the corner of Wall and Broad Street. Punishment for ruffians and evildoers was carried out in the cage stocks, whipping posts, or ducking stools in front of City Hall. That's pretty extreme. But they did abolish the police in one time and created a new one. The Revolutionary War, 1776, 1783. The city was occupied by the British during most of the Revolution from September 1776 to November 1783. The Redcoats seized control of the provincial and municipal governments, and a military governor was made responsible for providing protection for the citizenry. New Yorkers, however, were dissatisfied with the level of protection provided by the British Army, and in January 1777 they decided to do something about it. History repeats itself as they band together to form a civilian watch. With the city larger in size and population and its problems get greater than in the days of Dutch rule, instead of small rattle watch, they had a force of 80 men patrolling the streets during the evening hours. In May 1776, the British military commandant appointed 3 citizens to form a quasi-civil police department to administer and direct the night watch. So, I guess back then, bulk of the police force from the British were in daytime, and at night it was just one person walking around. Um, Literally just one person walking around, ringing the bell and sounding off the hours. Um, During the Revolutionary War, they created block watches. So a lot of stuff that I see now with the Asians under attack and stuff, there's a lot of Asian black block watches that are going on and stuff like that, and I see it repeating itself again. So that's what I thought I share this because I see a lot of this stuff in here that's seems to be repeating. So those who don't know the history are doomed to repeat it. Okay, so period of independence, 1783 to 1830. By the time of the Revolutionary War ended, the city's population had grown to 60,000, 60, from 6,000 to 60,000, and police protection had become a major problem. But little was done to deal with it. Crime continued to increase through the late 1820s. Although more watchmen were hired, they were widely regarded as incompetent, and the protection they provided was considered inadequate. Sorry, was considered inadequate. For years, the situation remained this way. Nothing was done until contempt of the city's weak police force finally gave way to fear that the city's social disintegration was imminent, and with that fear came the realization that something had to be done about providing New York with a strong, effective police department. Okay, New York's finest finally find its way. During the mid 1800s, New York became home of thousands of destitute and desperate immigrants from Ireland and Germany. Many could barely afford housing in the rat infested, unlit, unheated, and horribly overcrowded tenement and wooden shanties on the city outskirts. So, here again, we see something that's repeating. We have plenty of migrants that are coming in, and we're um, barely able to house all of them. We still have the rat infestation. Um, but yeah, so let's see what happens. Salaries at the time scarcely providing working people with enough to cover their living expenses. Men and women and children as young as 10 earn less than 30 cents a day for laboring 12 to 15 hours in unhealthy and hazardous factories. It's not much different now. City streets were unpaved, lacked proper drainage, and were cluttered with uncollected trash. When it rained, they quickly became quagmires of mud and filth. Many people fell sick from contaminated water, and overcrowded living conditions caused diseases to spread rapidly and uncontrollably. Okay, we kind of have COVID now. Um, Crime was rampant on the streets, especially when moonless nights left large parts of the city in total darkness. All right, well, we have street lamps now, so that's kind of not a problem, except for some places that don't have proper lighting. It was common for thieves to roam the streets, burglarizing buildings and attacking people as they hurried home. All right, we can see that. We're living that right now. Living conditions such as these caused anger and despair, making New York fertile ground for its tremendous growth in crime, vice, and disorder. Frightened and enraged by this criminal onslaught, New Yorkers looked at police departments far and near in hopes of finding a strong, effective model to copy. They decided on the Metropolitan Police of London. The London Police Model, 1830 to 1845. In 1828, Sir Robert Peel, British Home Secretary, introduced a bill establishing a paid professional police force, one that wore uniforms, as well drilled and devoted itself full time to protecting the peace, nicknamed Bobbies and Peelers. This police force has been created because a marked increase in criminal activity in England. With a similar upsurge in crime in their own city, New York has decided to try a similar solution. The municipal police, 1845 to 1857. The city's old system of policing, the 80-member night watch that patrolled the streets during the evening hours, was finally legislated out of existence in 1844 and replaced with a new system, the day and night police. Okay, so they were abolished again, second time they abolished, and they created something new. The state legislature approved the creation of the new force and authorized the hiring of up to 800 men, but the city council, rather than adopting the concept, decided that it could get by with a municipal police force of only 200 men. This small force, of course, quickly proved inadequate. In 1845, the original act of the state legislature was adopted and a uniformed municipal police force, 800 men, was established. It's kind of like what's going on right now, where they don't want to hire more police officers, and then they realize they don't have enough police officers, and now they're trying to hire more police officers. Um, Looks like the city council gave uh, the police system a problem back then too, huh? Okay, so the first shield, May 23rd, 1845. Many policemen strongly objected to wearing a specially designed uniform. Preferring to dress in their own clothes, they viewed the uniform as a British innovation and an infringement on their rights as free-born American citizens. Many citizens shared this contempt and publicly condemned a uniformed force as nothing more than a standing army and liveried lackeys. All right, it's kind of like what's going on now. Too military like, too militant like. Um, this picture here is a picture of the original copper badge. A compromise was finally reached under which the police officers wore an 8-point star-shaped copper badge over the left breast of their coats in lieu of a complete uniform. The policemen became known as Star Police and later known as Coppers and Cops. So that's where the term cops come from the copper badges they used to wear. It was a nickname for them. The first patrol guide, July 16th, 1845. So the patrol guide is like the rule book of the NYPD. Here comes the first patrol guide. The first set of printed rules and regulations was issued to the force in 1845. These regulations for the day and night police of the city of New York, with instructions as to the legal powers and duties of policemen, dealt with the statutory and administrative aspects of the job. Policemen were instructed that the prevention of crime being the most important objective in your view, your exhortations must be constantly used to accomplish that end, and the absence of crime will be considered the best proof of the efficiency of the police. So, according to that, we're not that efficient right now. NYPD is not that efficient. There's still a lot of crime out there. All right, the first official uniform, 1853. Full uniforms were finally adopted in 1853. The first full uniform consisted a leather helmet and a blue single-breast cloth frock coat buttoned to the neck of the letters MP, Municipal Police, on a standing collar. Gray trousers with a half-inch black stripe running down the side of each leg completed the outfit. Each officer was equipped with a baton and was 22 inches long and 3/4 of an inch thick. The department rules and regulations required that the club could be used only in urgent self-defense. The municipal police were not authorized to carry sidearms for patrol. This is very interesting because this is a unarmed police force. Well, they had nightsticks, but they didn't have guns. No guns. So this is very interesting. Let's see if this works. Formal training. Formal training came into existence in 1853. Police captains instructed officers in the school of soldier and drill instructors were appointed to train and discipline officers in crowd and riot control. Okay, we still have that. Communications. During the early 1850s, the New York police constructed a simple telegraph network between their chief's office and the various precincts. The primary purpose of this communication system was to spread the dispatch of extra officers to fire and riot scenes. However, most of the messages dealt with lost children and stray horses. Okay, so I guess back then they responded to fire jobs too. They were the firemen at the time, I guess. I don't know. The Metropolitan Police, 1857 to 1870. Concerned about the city's mushroom crime rate, officials decided that sweeping and radical changes had to be made in police protection. A state-controlled metropolitan police district was established to step in and slowly phase out the municipal police department. Interesting. So there's no more city cops, it's all state now. Members of the municipal force were reluctant to relinquish their jobs and continued to patrol the city's streets, often clashing with the Metropolitan Police over turf. Wow, so they got into a beef, I guess. While the courts attempted to resolve the problem, the two blue-coated forces competed with one another in arresting the ringleaders of the Bowery Boys and the Pug Uglies gangs of hardened street toughs that terrorized the city. Okay, eventually an agreement was reached and many municipal officers joined the ranks of the Metropolitan Police. Okay. Under the Metropolitan Police Act, the Mets, I guess that's where the Mets get their name from, were governed by three police commissioners and consisted of a general superintendent, two deputy superintendents, five surgeons, and assorted, uh, next page, inspectors, captains, sergeants, and patrolmen. All were outfitted in similar uniforms. The chief difference between the frock coat, the chief difference between the frock coat being the frock coat. Those worn by superior officers were double-breasted. All others were single-breasted. In 1857, under Frederick Talmadge, the first general superintendent, the Metropolitan Police District was divided into precincts, which in turn were subdivided into patrol beats. The precincts, some having more than one station house, were each staffed with one inspector and one captain, four sergeant, patrolmen, and other officers assigned to details. It's kind of similar to what it is now. Among the improvements introduced in the 1850 was the Rogues Portrait Gallery, a collection of photographs of hundreds of known criminals, also established as a harbor police force of 25 men and more sophisticated telegraphic link among precincts. Okay, so that's kind of like the specialty units. Um, but the police force being turned into precincts and then patrol beats. It's kind of what is similar now. So we still have precincts and patrol beats, which are sectors, but we also have the boroughs. So it's kind of like one extra step. So it's the whole police department, the whole city, and then they're broken down to boroughs like Brooklyn North, Brooklyn South, Queens North, Queens South, Bronx, Manhattan North, Midtown, Manhattan South, and Staten Island. And then you have the precincts in those boroughs. Um, Civil War draft rights. In 1863, the Mets were confronted with their first major crisis, the Civil War draft rights. With tempers flaring in response to President Lincoln's proclamation that 300,000 men would be inducted into the Union Army, rioters wreaked mayhem on the streets of New York. The violence and destruction went on for 4 days before the frenzied protest was quelled. Many lives were lost and injuries suffered, and several station houses were burned to the ground after officers abandoned them as they fled for their lives. As the Civil War won down, the crimes of violence in the city increased. In 1864, a police insurance fund was established to guarantee financial security to the families of policemen killed or disabled in line of duty. In 1868, with the Mets ranks largely comprised of aged veterans from the old municipal police department, the commissioners successfully lobbied for half-pay retirement pensions for his loyal public servants. Okay, so that's where the pension and the disability line of duty fund comes in. The municipal police department is restored. In 1870, the state legislature passed an act known as Tweed Charter, and that returned police powers to the municipal police. The Mets merged with the restored municipal police, which was governed by four commissioners appointed by the mayor. Okay, so here we come back to city policing. A flag of honor was presented to the department in 1872 by the people of the city in recognition of the outstanding performance by the police during times of public disturbance, particularly the draft riots. The flag reserved for display in annual parades and funerals of officers killed in the line of duty was inscribed on one side with the department motto, "Faith unto Death," and with the city seal on the other. In 1873, the department was reorganized. The number of commissioners was up to 5, and the force was now comprised of a superintendent, 3 inspectors, captains, sergeants, patrolmen, civilian clerks, and doormen. Civilians licensed by the police to act as security guards for residential buildings. That's interesting. Hiring standards were tightened, and police candidates were required to be United States citizens, residents of the state for at least a year, and free of any criminal convictions. Okay, it's kind of the same except for a residency of at least a year. In addition, a board of surgeons was established to examine candidates and supervise the medical and surgical services of the department. Also changed was the procedural manual, which was not only revised and updated, but introduced a new title for the police force, Department of Police for the City of New York. Oh, the NYPD, there we go. From 1872 to 1881, in a bid to improve sanitary conditions in the city, the department was put in charge of hiring, overseeing, and providing equipment to a street cleaning task force. Okay, that's interesting. In 1874, Mayor William Haymeyer tagged the department with its popular nickname, the Finest. The improvements kept coming. Telephone links between all police facilities replaced, sporadically placed, outdated telegraph systems. In 1880, a year later, a central office for the Bureau of Detectives was established at police headquarters located at 300 Mulberry Street. Okay, so police headquarters was Mulberry Street. In 1888, the department hired its first woman employees. Four women joined the force and were assigned as precinct matrons. It wasn't until a year later, however, that they were officially considered uniformed members of the service. By 1894, with the restructuring of the police department in full swing, the state senate appointed a committee to investigate alleged abuse of authority by the police. The office of superintendent was abolished and replaced with a chief of police who had the power to assign and transfer and to suspend policemen for up to 10 days prior to trial by the police commissioners. I kind of like the state senate appointed committee, a state level appointed committee, for the cops to be able to regulate themselves. That's a big thing for me. It's a big problem for me. Anyway, Teddy Roosevelt, an innovator. Okay, 1895. Theodore Roosevelt was appointed to the newly installed Board of Police Commissioners. He immediately set about strengthening qualifications for appointment to ensure that physical and mental ability would be given more weight than political influence. Okay. Advocating progressive recruitment, he hired the first female secretary and campaigned to have Jewish officers join the ranks of the primary Irish Catholic police force. Okay, all right, there's some equality there going on. Roosevelt helped pave the way for the modernization of the department during his tenure. As a commissioner, telephone call boxes were installed on city sidewalks, permitting officers to communicate with their station houses, which is the precinct. Station houses were renovated and more matrons were assigned to them. A patrol wagon service was introduced to help patrolmen to get to their posts and emergencies more quickly. To relieve overcrowding and improve hygiene, sleeping quarters for transients were abolished as station houses and replaced with separate lodging houses. Okay. The 32 caliber revolver became the standard on-duty sidearm, and a bicycle squad was established and quickly expanded to 100 officers. Okay, so back then there was no cars, no patrol cars and stuff. It was mostly foot patrol, um, and it looks like they're carrying guns now. Department morale greatly increased as a result of Roosevelt's innovations. It was boosted when even further when he instituted a recognition system for material merit, meritorious police service before he resigned in 1897 to become Secretary of the Navy. Okay, modern day police department. In 1898, the state legislature ordered that 24 local government cities, towns, and villages consolidate into a single entity, New York City. As a result, the police department of the greater city of New York assimilated 18 smaller police agencies from various parts of Queens, Kings, Richmond, Bronx, and New York counties. The greatly expanded force was named the New York Police Department. Okay, here we go. So every borough had their own thing going on, I guess, and they all consolidated. A year later, plainclothes officers were used for the first time. They traveled in cars, protecting streetcars from attack by strikers. The city governmental expansion made the problems of policing more complex in the early years of the 20th century. In 1901, the curbed confusion and dissent within the Department's administration. The state legislature adopted a bill giving a single commissioner of police responsibility for overseeing the agency. Colonel Michael Murphy was the first to hold the position, and he appointed William Devery as first deputy police commissioner. Okay, so this is when they started having just one commissioner. Okay, I guess there was just too much back and forth indecisiveness with 5 people. Working 7 days a week, the policemen of the early 1900s got to know residents, merchants, and ruffians of their 8 block foot post. The round-the-clock chart included tours of 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., and 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Okay, we still have those tours. Those are the scooter charts. Same hours. Um, Officers rarely got a day off, and when they did, it was usually after 45 to 50 days of work. Yeah, that sounds about right. Same thing going on now. Turn of the century, 1900, 1920. The city and its police department now face an era of modernization and growth spurred on the community needs and the needs of the time. Many exciting innovations were ushered in with the first decade. The first automobiles could be seen puttering around. Bridges and tunnels connected the city to neighboring areas. Railway construction began. Mechanical traffic control devices were installed. A more specific technique replaced the um, antiquated criminal identification system, and department continued to organize specialized units. In autumn of 1904, the Mounted Division, recognized for its mobility and range of vision, was used to calm labor unrest, crowd controls, and regulate traffic. A year later, the Motorcycle Bureau was formed to help handle traffic duties. The Mounted Unit still does what they do there. They're still around. Those are the cops on the horses. By 1909, folks were regularly moseying into and about the city in horseless carriages via the newly opened Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Queensboro, and Manhattan bridges. Police headquarters had been relocated to 240 Center Street, and a Bureau of Criminal Investigation was established to maintain criminal records. An effective new method of fingerprint identification was used for the first time by the Safe and Loft Squad in 1911 to positively identify a burglar through fingerprints left behind on a windowsill, later renamed the Safe, Loft, and Truck Squad. This unit protected businessmen from skilled thieves who made it a habit of going after and making off with valuables stored in safes, lofts, and trucks. As the city population grew, so did its crime problem. 1914, recognizing that the youth of today could turn into the criminal of tomorrow, Captain John Sweeney founded the Police Athletic League on Manhattan's Lower East Side, initially called the Junior Police Corps. Its mission was to keep youngsters out of trouble by channeling their energies into recreational and athletic activities. They should definitely bring that back. I feel like kids these days, they definitely need a place to, you know, um, let off their energy and stuff. Entering difficult times in 1920. In 1917, America entered World War I. That same year, the department put its first radio-equipped patrol car on the road and established a missing persons bureau. The war ended in November 1918 and was quickly followed by the Roaring Twenties. Police faced huge problems trying to enforce the constitutional ban on alcohol. Gangster-controlled speakeasies reaped huge profits through the illegal sale of liquor. Prohibition and economic hard times caused criminal behavior to flourish. 1924, a course of comprehensive training for all members of the department was introduced at the Police College on Broome Street in Manhattan. New officers spent an arduous 3 months studying police doctrine, know-how, and in-service courses were given on all levels to keep department members abreast of the latest developments in police work. Yeah, that's still going on now, and I don't think it's enough training. I think they definitely need more training. Um, in 1929, the aviation unit was born. Cool. and more radio-equipped patrol cars were put out on the road. In October 1929, the stock market crashed, panic on Wall Street spread, and soon engulfed most of the world. The Great Depression devastated the economy, creating widespread poverty and desperation. Police officers proved their commitment to public service by securing food, fuel, clothing, and jobs for the needy, and by generously donating to a relief fund. That's cool. That would have been nice during COVID. It would be nice now too if they did that. The district attorney's office squad was set up as an undercover unit operating out of the Manhattan Criminal Courts building. Its job was to fight organized crime and racketeers who were attempting to capitalize on the city's plight. Coping with traffic and teenagers, 1930s. By 1930, Manhattan neatly organized streets and avenues had become the settling for a growing number of traffic accidents and deaths. Juvenile delinquency had also become a problem. The department met both of these challenges with long-term solutions. In response to the traffic problem, it implemented a three-pronged program of regulation, enforcement, and safety education. The juvenile delinquency problem was met through the development of a unit called the Crime Prevention Bureau. Consistent with PAL's Police Athletic League philosophy, the Bureau offered counseling as well as educational and recreational activities to the city's youth in hopes that they would keep them from turning to crime. That's a good way to do it. Instead of just locking them up, that's a good way to do it. In 1939, the department played an inciting role policing a big event in New York World's Fair in Flushing Meadow, Queens. But that's a good way to do it. Offer resources, offer programs and stuff, and tutoring and counseling and stuff. That's a good way to do it. Shell shocked and blue, the 40s and 50s. In 1941, America entered World War II, months before the costly lesson of Pearl Harbor. A civil defense strategy had been formulated to ensure the safety of New York City's citizens in event of an enemy attack. Working with other federal, state, and city agencies, the NYPD was entrusted with reuniting separated families and providing relief. In addition to their police duties, officers also enforced the nation's rationing of such staples as canned food, fuel, rubber products, and women's nylons. In 1945, the war ended. With the city's population continuing to grow by leaps and bounds, the department concentrated on expansion. By 1957, its strength had reached 23,590. The number of police officers now is it's about 38,000 police officers and like 18,000 civilians, and their funding is about $6 billion. Billion, would it be? Yeah. So the 1960s, a time of civil unrest. With the 1960s came great advances in income, education, and housing, but not in civil rights. Not today, neither. The mood of contentment that had characterized the 1950s was shattered not only by the skyrocketing crime wave, but by civil disorder, alarming rises in welfare cases, drug abuse, and youth unemployment. The youth again became rampant. The city was entering a time of urban crisis. The community cohesion began to disintegrate, and inner city crime rates rose alarmingly. Sounds like today, it's still going on. The police officer's capacity to understand the law, deal with explosion situations, and to cope with social and economic problems was continually tested during this decade. In 1964, Harlem erupted in civil disorder, leaving many seriously injured, one dead, and hundreds arrested. In 1968, citywide disorder followed the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Stuff still going on. Striving to meet the needs of the time, 1970s. After the violence of the 1960s, there was a need to rebuild police-community relations. The department recognized that increased foot patrols would best accomplish this goal. A foot officer could be a source of information, a counselor to the public, and the eyes and ears of the department. It's kind of like what they're doing right now with the NCO program, the Neighborhood Coordinator Officer, and Operation Impact, where they put the rookie officers on the corners and stuff. 1972, an equal opportunity policy was implemented. It directed that women be hired and assigned to perform the same duties as male officers, women were given equal promotion opportunities and the right to undertake the same law enforcement role as men. The 1980s, as the 20th century moved along, so did the wheels of progress turn for the department. Rapid response to criminal and emergency incidents became the department's standard measure of performance. More officers were assigned to radio car patrol, and the department's ability to interact with the city's citizens began to decline. Realizing that a balance had to be struck between rapid response and community relations, the department instituted a community police officer program. Community police officers would be assigned to specific beats, becoming acquainted with the residents, merchants, and criminals in their best area, in their beat area. They were charged with more than just patrolling their beats. They were to become community advocates and problem solvers, organizing the community to resist crime. They would do more than just respond to incidents. They would look for and correct underlying cause of condition. In the early 1990s, under Police Commissioner Lee Brown, community policing was adopted as the department's dominant style of policing. This radical change involves all segments of the Department of Community Policing. Emphasis is no longer on rapid response, although the capability for this response remains, but on problem solving and police community relations. In 1993, under Police Commissioner Raven Kelly, community policing remains the department's dominant style of policing. Police Commissioner Kelly was refined and continues to expand community policing. Today, the department stands an example to the world of what modern policing is about. So, I think we need more work on the community policing part. To be honest with you, I don't think it's fully there yet. So, that's that. And with that said, that's the history of the NYPD. A couple things I want to go over though. Let's go back to the beginning of it. Let's go back to the beginning of it. So in the beginning of it, you see the police logos. Oops. It's froze. All right. There. Boom. So here's the police department. In the middle of the page, you see the emblem of the police department. So a lot of people were saying that this was a slave owner here with a whip and an Indian, and is supposed to be racist and stuff. So this is actually the city emblem, and that's a Dutch settler, pilgrim, Dutch settler, and the thing in his hand is I forgot what it's called, but it's what sailors use to measure the water depth at the time. At the bottom is like a ball, a heavy object, and they drop it into the water to see the depth of the water when they're sailing, so they don't crash into the bottom, like if they don't get sandbarred or whatever. Um, and he's wearing a pilgrim hat. And then on the right is the Native Americans that were here in Manhattan at the time, and they're supposed to be holding the shield, which is the city emblem, whatever, and they're at peace because the eagle is supposed to represent peace or something like that, and whatnot. The 5 stars are supposed to represent the 5 boroughs, and then the scale of justice on top, which is supposed to be equal, policing equally. And then you have the reef or the outline of the state or whatever around, or the maple leaf or whatever. But whatever the case is, that's not a whip. Yeah, I just wanted to add that. And let me see if I have any more stuff. I believe I had. Okay, so I was a little wrong with the numbers. So 36,000 officers and 19,000 civilian employees. Um, the budget is 5.4 billion, and that was in 2022. Um, but yeah, it's pretty cool. Um, Civilian Complaint Review Board was created by Mayor Dinkins in 1992. Uh, it was because in the mid 1980s, NYPD began to police street level drug markets much more intensively, leading to a sharp increase in incarceration. And it was like unfair policing, people were saying, and stuff like that. And there was a lot of like, complaints. So Mayor Deakins created Civilian Complaint Review Board. Um, yeah. I really want to see what do I want to see changed, and what do I see that's still the same. Most of the stuff is still the same, which is kind of sad. You want to say, right? Because it's the police department is so big, and so much time has gone by. You would think that we would change things. So the whole abolishing the cop thing is not a new idea. It's actually happened twice. Do I think that we should do it? I think it should be revamped. I think we need a. I think it's due for a change. I also think that it should probably be the power of investigating officers should probably be changed back to the state, um, instead of the department investigating itself. Also, the community policing thing, we definitely need more of that. We definitely need to gain the community's trust back. Um, I keep saying we. I'm not even part of the police department anymore. I should stop saying we. The police department definitely needs to work on that, and the police department definitely needs to take the first step in it. We should definitely reinvest in programs for our children. Um, basketball programs, after school programs, tutoring programs. We should definitely make the playing field for education more even. Um, and yeah, we should get rid of the racism that's going on and stuff like that in it. But those are just my opinions. And I know it takes time, but it's just so much time has passed by since the 1800s to now. And we're still facing the same um, problems. The rat infestation, we got migrants coming in, not enough housing for them. Um, the recession is here, so it's like, money is a problem, and job. COVID came, so we still have, we have that. We have lack of resources and everything. I think we're facing a lot of repeating of history and stuff here. So I think we should definitely learn from our history, and we should try to, come up with solutions to quit repeating it. Whatever doesn't work doesn't it's not going to work. Even we tried before, and then we try out new ideas and see what happens. We definitely need to, you know, come together on this. So let me know what you think. Peace, love, and one blood. I'll see you next time.